Hi everyone, I'm Ed Foster, the Deputy Head of Motorsport Content here at Goodwood, and I arrived here about 3 months ago, and what struck me was how many cars are on the local roads, and a part of that is just the sheer number of full-time employees here at Goodwood that sort of measure in the hundreds. So I've asked everyone to sort of put their thumbs out and hitch lifts, see if we can share some cars, and so I'm out and about today, and I'm going to see who I can find on the roads. Really hope we find someone, because otherwise this is going to be a bit of a duff feature. That is former Formula 1 driver Tiff Needell. Hang on a second. Look at that.
Let me in.
Hi Tiff.
Ed!
How you doing?
Well, I like this idea. Will you take me to the racetrack, please?
Yeah, no worries. What are you doing hanging around at this time of day?
Just loitering.
Yeah?
A nice night at the Goodwood Hotel, very comfortable.
Oh, very nice. Should we do a bit of a sort of a longer trip, seeing as we've got a bit of time to chat then?
Well, I don't know, I'm going to hang around, Ed. There's track to go to.
Yeah, okay.
What are you sitting anyway? It's all a bit plash for you,
It is a bit. I would love to say this is my normal car, but it's not. Lexus has very kindly lent it to us. Ooh. Yeah, and
lots
it's
of angles and dips, lots of
LC 500
weird shapes, aren't there?
So, well, we are now almost on the Festival of Speed hill climb, surrounded by sheep rather than people. You've been up. How many times have you been up this?
Not that often. I've not been a big hill man. Because, obviously the revival meeting is the one for me, and I always find the festival's like a garden party, and if you do the hill, you wait down here for about an hour getting prepared to go up, and then you either go fast and risk clattering the wall like a complete idiot, or in the Monaco straw bales, or else you go slowly like I do and just showbiz and wave a lot. Yeah. And then you stop at the top of the hill for half an hour, and then you take half an hour. It takes a lot of your day.
Yeah. Right? When you are surrounded by some quite fun people.
Yeah, but I enjoy much more just wandering around the festival. I love going to see all the manufacturers' stands and the side shows and the exotic cars, and the wander around the paddock to see all the racing cars that I used to wander around looking at as a little kid. So the driving up the hill is to me the least exciting part of the festival weekend.
I won't dawdle then.
It's fraught with potential. I drove a Porsche 956 once. I'm on slicks in the rain because they didn't have any wet tyres.
And then they weren't warm either.
No, stone cold.
Stone cold.
So that, and of course, with the locked diff that the 956 had, you got no rear differential either. So it's just pushing.
That's actually sort of quite a good point. So I mean, you have driven so many cars in your life as a sort of single-seater driver, sports car driver, touring car driver.
Here's Monaco. You braked early enough.
Yeah, we're on the brakes.
It's a left here.
What's been what was the most difficult car you drove? Because obviously a 956 in the wet, on slicks, going up Goodwood Festival Speed Hill Climb is probably quite high up there.
The most difficult I've driven was just at the revival meeting this year, when I drove a Ford Falcon in the wet that didn't want to go anywhere that I wanted it to go. Yeah. Had incredibly light steering and no feel.
So they want to go where you want them to go in the dry?
Yes, it was quite fun in the dry, so I was lucky it dried out for the race, so I had a bit of fun. But difficult cars, it's a funny thing, isn't it, what's difficult? Yeah. Formula 4s, Formula 3s are all good. The March 79, when Aero first came in, when we had this porpoising, so in the Formula 2, the 792 BMW March, I drove in Japan and England, and road tested the March Formula 1 car. They had this porpoising, early ground effect. So the cars would suck in as the ground effect pulled the car into the track. But then when it got down to only about 1 millimetre left, the air would stall, would block.
Oh my
so all your downforce, so it would jump up again.
So then you'd have no grip.
It would suck down again. So you get down the straights, which we called porpoising. And it was horrendous. This whole car was jumping up and down and you're coming to a braking. So your early ground effect was difficult. Yeah. I also lived through the arrival of carbon brakes.
Ooh,
which unless they're on, I mean, nowadays they're amazing and they seem to work at a wider temperature. Obviously they only work really well when they're very hot. They still work consistently when they're not too hot. But in the early days they were either not working at all, or completely stopping you dead, or one end working and they'd wear the discs out and wear the pads out. So,
but I mean, because you drove, was it a 2005 Williams BMW at Rockingham?
Yes, drove that at Rockingham.
Because I seem to remember you saying
Vicky. I was trying to do 3 laps before Vicky could do
do one. Yeah. Oh, two. But I seem to remember you saying that the brakes you had a bit of a problem with because you'd never left foot braked.
Yes. Well, I didn't think I'd better tell Williams that I'd never left foot braked. But I got to the workshop and sat in the car to have a seat fitted. I realised that your right foot goes in one bucket and your left foot goes in the other bucket. You can't move them across. Yeah. So I had to, which I done in a cart. We all do it in carts, quite natural. It's funny that we come into cars and we don't do it. I now do it in automatic cars all the time with these flappy paddle cars. My left foot is much more sensitive. So I went out and rocked it, and I kept on, you know, almost out braking myself. And I thought, I'm not going very quick. These brakes are very impressive. Yeah. But I persevered, and after about the second lap, I then getting a bit more braver on the throttle, and I arrived really too fast for the hairpin. So I'll brake too late now. So I just pressed a lot harder in a panic mode, and the thing just stopped dead.
Stopped dead.
So I realised my lovely little left leg that had spent its life gently pressing clutch pedals, I had no strength in it compared with what was needed. So only when I panicked and pressed really hard
did you realise that something was actually going to happen.
So I'd have to bench press my left leg a lot. I think.
Is that the technical term? I'm not much of a gym going person.
Torture chambers. I used to do it myself.
So
when I was younger.
It's great that you are the first. I'm not going to say victim. You're the first Goodwood Carpool person to make use of this.
Not too tight. I'm not too zoomed in, are you? I can move my seat back and get further away from the camera. I don't.
So, but you're the first person making use of the Goodwood Carpool scheme.
Yeah. I was very impressed with the quality. So
we aim to please at Goodwood. Interestingly, though, your kind of love of motor racing started at Goodwood.
Coming over this hill towards us, the other way.
Really?
I mean, just amazing whenever I drive down there. We had an Austin 7. Sometimes we had no car. I mean, I look back at my 50s family, it's like a Monty Python. We lived in a rented flat. We had no fridge, we had no washing machines. Mum threw a mangle through the clothes wash, and it's unbelievable how the 50s were. We had rationing books when I was born. Yeah. So sometimes we didn't have a car. I had no television at all for periods of my childhood, but one broke, we couldn't afford one. And yes, we had these second-hand Austin 7s from, 1930s. And we used to have to stop at the bottom of the hills at the garage to fill them up with water until we knew the hills were coming. It was a bizarre life and wonderful times. Yeah. And so it came up these great hills and over the top, and then I could see the seaside and see Wittering, where we used to go as kids for summer holidays. We came down from Weybridge where we lived. Yeah. And for the first time I crawled up the big bank outside the chicane, which is still there, looked over the top and saw these noisy, smelly, loud machines with these heroes wrestling through the chicane. That was all I wanted to be, was a racing driver.
Yeah. But that was age 3, wasn't it? Or something like that?
Must be about 50. Yeah. I remember the thin wall special, the green thin wall special.
It was Peter Collins.
I don't know. It was
54?
55, 56. Who drove the thin wall special?
I thought that would have been Peter
Collins. It
was a Ferrari,
wasn't it? It was a Ferrari painted green.
I thought that would have been 54 with Peter Collins, maybe. But it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't until you were kind of 16, really, that you actually got to drive a car on a track, was it?
Well, 17. We couldn't go on tracks.
Right.
It's when I left school in the summer of '69. Good record, that always reminds me well. That I borrowed Mum's Morris 1000. We had upgraded the family car. We had a Morris 1000, 4-door as well. Yeah. And borrowed her Morris 1000, went to the Brands Hatch Racing Drivers School with all the money I'd earned being a Christmas postman and being a caddy at the golf clubs and washing people's cars. And went to the motor racing stables there and did the initial trial for 10 quid and drove a Ford Cortina 1600E. That was like a supercar to me, just driving the Ford Cortina. And then 5 laps in the Lotus 51 Formula Ford. And of course, just once you drive a racing car, it makes it worse because then
the bug bites.
The bug bites.
Yeah.
I was amazed how different racetracks look. When you spectate to when you drive, it's a completely different circuit. Little hills and slopes are so much different when you're in the car. And that was a magical moment.
But did you? I mean, obviously, you kind of wanted to be a motor racing driver.
Yes.
But when you got going, were you? You went on to great success. But when you first started, were you any good?
Well, yeah,
Because I've always wondered this about sort of professional racing drivers. Because when I did my first race, I got lapped by everyone, and I knew.
I was sort of. I mean, I'd driven Mum's Morris 1000 around snowy car parks. That was the thing. As soon as it snowed, I'd go out and slide around.
Well, hence why you're so good in the wet.
Yeah, probably.
Even better in the snow.
Wet roundabouts. And I mean, the school encouraged me. I think, but then you think, well, they want you to come back because they pay more money. But Tony Lanfranchi, the great chief instructor, you're right, Tiff. He has quite good natural ability there.
Yeah.
And then when I won the car in the magazine competition, I had a week's course at the Jim Russell School, was part of the Prix. So I'd done the Jim Russell School as well before I actually got to my first race. And I'd raced a few Brands Hatch races. They had these little 4-car races.
Oh, right, yeah.
For 30 quid a race.
But you were earning, I think, at the time, only 45 quid.
Yeah, that was my wonderful budget. 1970, trainee civil engineer working full-time out in Essex.
On the M5, didn't you?
No, that was the second. That was 71.
That was
my
71.
first year was Chelmsford. And my take-home pay as a trainee civil engineer for George Wimpey was £45 a month. And these races were £30, so it was one a month. I rented a room in Chelmsford, Essex for £10 a month. So I lived, because that's all I had left, on £5 a month. You have to multiply by 25, I think, now. It's probably about 150 quid or something a month.
It's not a lot.
Money. So I used to hitchhike home on a Friday night down the A12. Hitchhiking was like carpooling.
Well,
so,
there we go. We've come full circle.
I know. Our children aren't allowed to hitchhike now. It's too dangerous. And in fact, my son's just got back from interrailing around Europe.
Oh, right.
I think interrailing seems to be the new method of
hitchhiking.
It is.
You
buy that ticket and go. But so I had to hitchhike home, dodge the fares around the London Underground, the British Rail, get home and eat my parents' house out of food and borrow Mum's Morris 1000 and do these little school races once a month.
But what do they say about all this? Because I suppose you had the civil engineering on the side.
Yeah, they knew I'd done my career, so I'd stay at school. I went to university because I was doing a 5-year sandwich course.
Yeah.
So it's quite good because I was at university every winter and working as a civil engineer every summer and earning money. So I had the career going. So it wasn't as if these kids now, I meet so many talented drivers, instructing at the Thruxton Racing School and places, that have dedicated everything, and haven't got a qualification or a trade. And they end up being racing instructors for the rest of their lives, which is quite good earnings these days.
No, you can do all right.
So but parents weren't too, because they thought it would die out, my racing fad. But
they hadn't taken into account quite how stubborn you were.
No, the dedication was there. So they supported me and filled me with food and.
But I think because you were working on the M5, and didn't you take a week's sick pay just to do the Jim Russell?
Well, that was quite luckily, in fact. You
obviously weren't
when
very sick.
I won the car. I was sick. I'd won the car in 1971, the January 1971. So that was my first year racing a real car. But I had to have a cartilage operation. Which I damaged playing that dangerous rugby game, which is lethal game. So I had to go to hospital for cartilage. Of course, then I couldn't be a site engineer, which I was. So it was legitimate.
Right. I didn't know it was legitimate.
Sickness leave.
Oh, right.
So on paid.
Are you saying that because of the cameras, or is that really?
On paid leave from George Wimpey and Company Limited, I was able to. But I've already gone to Scotland. All my fellow colleagues had to go to Scotland for their training programme. So I had to do a quick course down in Brentford instead. But anyway, so yes, it was a permanent sick leave. So my week's sick leave was taken to the Jim Russell School.
Yeah.
And then entered my first race at Stetson. I left the car up there because I did the school course in my Autosport car.
Yeah.
And then returned for my first race in the middle of May 1971.
All right.
And that was, you just don't forget that. That was just. I qualified out of, about 10th on a 30-car field.
Yeah.
This was a club race, and Formula Ford in those days was like the karting of today.
Yeah.
Because there were national championships going on, but also every circuit, club races.
Yeah, there were loads and
you
loads
could race
of races.
somewhere, every weekend. And there was a 30-car grid just for a club meeting at Snetterton. And I remember that first, heading off into the first 2 corners with just cars all around you. And then someone cartwheeled out of a Sears corner on my very first racing lap. I'm going onto the straight in my brand new, don't touch me, there's a bloke
so your
in the
latest
field
69.
cartwheeling alongside me. And I'm thinking, oh, hell.
But in that, it was a Lotus 69 that you got because of the awards.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? Yeah. But you did, I think over the sort of next 2.5 years, you did something like 90 races and finished 82 of them.
Yeah, 82%.
I mean, that has the whiff of someone who doesn't have a lot of money behind them. Because nowadays, I can't think of any Formula Ford racer who would have that.
Well, no, but then that's all the Ayrton Senna thing, you know, driving people off the roads. I mean, the beauty of Formula Ford in the old days, that the rich kids weren't there. It didn't seem that the rich fathers wanting their sons to race hadn't sort of arrived. And karting had just started. There was quite a bit of karting going on. But all the Formula Ford, we were all just with transit vans and trailers. We were like the karting of today.
Yeah.
And the cars weren't scientific, so you could set up a campus and casters.
Do the work yourself.
Yeah, you could be competitive.
Yeah.
But we all had to pay our own bills and repair our own cars. And the barriers were only about 3 feet off the side of the track, great big earth banks.
Yeah.
And people got hurt as well because the cars used to fold up around you. So there was an element of danger still there.
Yeah.
And there's the element of cost still there. So, you know, we had to build up to the limit progressively. In the modern kids, you know, with the huge car park runoffs, instead of slowly reaching the limit, they use the opposite. They go in a full throttle, go off into the car park at Cops or at Eau Rouge, and okay, that's a bit too quick, and they come backwards to find the limit.
You don't do that with a barrier next to the track.
So we slowly got nearer and nearer the limit. So, you know, we didn't crash as much. There were still lots of shunts, obviously, but it's certainly, if you know, I would obviously opt out of moments. And I would, you know, discretion was the better part of valor. It was a modern racing driver. I mean, that horrendous Senna quote, you know, if you see a gap and you don't go for a gap, Mr. Stewart. Was Jackie? Was he telling Jackie in that interview?
I don't know who he was. It was definitely an interview.
He said, Mr. Stewart, if you see a gap and you don't go, you are no longer a racing driver. Well, if that gap's closing...
Yeah, if the gap is only 2 inches wide...
Yes, well, then you're just going to... Either the other bloke... I mean, Senna made the other bloke chicken out and open the gap up again.
Yeah.
You know, but if the gap doesn't get opened,
then
you have
it's
a crash.
Be a monumental crash. I'm talking of the dangers of it. One of your sort of big heroes was Jim Clark.
Yes, he was...
But you were, I think, 16 or something when he died.
Yes.
And I mean, how did you hear? And how did that not put you off motor racing? Because you were still obviously kind of.
Lots of drivers were dying. So I mean, Stuart grew up at and Stuart kept on saying all his friends he was going to funerals every week. So I'd also got used as a spectator to the fact that people could die. It wasn't, you know, the fact that Clark got killed. He was just another one, really. You know, I've been spectating at the clinging to the fence at Clearways, watching the BOAC 1,000 kilometres. We actually dropped in at my aunt's house, and they were the ones that said terrible news, which I didn't know of.
Yeah.
Although a lot of people at Brands Hatch did know. So yeah, I was crying that night. It was terrible,
but it didn't put you off.
No,
any
never,
more
because
than
death was part of Formula One
Yeah.
that I'd grown up with, and you know, but it would never happen to me. It was what every driver lives
the
by
usual
the grace.
phrase, isn't it? But there was also one of your kind of not teammates, but one of the guys who did the Jim Russell school.
Yeah, Lee Gaydos.
Yes, Lee Gaydos, that's it. Yeah, who
young kid from America
in sort of third race or something.
Yeah. Club at a Marshalls post at Mallory.
But then, you know, when you're asked kind of your favourite era, you always talk about Redman and Hobbs and Derek Bell, and it's not really the safest, is it?
No. I don't. Brian Redman admitting, you know, he went to bed at Spa, you know, thinking he was going to die the next day.
Yeah.
You know, would he get back to the bedroom? And it was pretty spooky. But for those that survived, I mean, they just drove such wonderful circuits and such a wonderful variety of machinery. You know, I mean, it's very zone now if you're a Formula One driver.
Yeah.
You go around these horrible, great modern circuits, and you don't have that fantastic thrill of the basic thrill of being a racing driver is taken away while they sort of moan so much about small things.
Yeah. So sort of rewinding a little bit to your Formula Ford's spell, things kind of changed dramatically when you bought a second. Well, yeah, it was a second-hand Crosley off bungee jumping.
Yes, a bungee jumping.
But you didn't pay for it.
No. And I raced the Lotus that I'd won in the competition for 2.5 years and sold that to Austria. Which has now come back and I've owned it again.
Because you're now racing that, aren't you?
Yeah, I bought it back. Well, bought the chassis plate back anyway. It was a wonderful new car by the time I've been restored so many times. But I got a cost price car from Eldon. So the great thing about Formula Ford in my day was the fact it was multi-chassis manufacturer. So you could do deals, you know, if you had a bit of talent. So Eldon were after me because they saw I had some talent and gave me a cost price Mark 10 and paid off some debts.
Yeah.
And then after a couple of years of racing that, which I came second in a national championship, I was offered the latest Elder, the Mark 17, for free. So I could sell the Mark 10 and pay off my debts. But it was the worst Formula Ford ever designed, I think, the Elder Mark 17. I don't think anyone's ever resurrected one for historic racing.
It's that bad. Right.
So my career was just, I was finishing 9th and 10th and, wasn't on it at all. I remember Rad Dougal, who was a South African that came over, I raced with Tolmans and stuff, I got very friendly with him. He said he hadn't really seen my early career. He said, no, Tiff, you could be quite good in a decent car.
Give me a decent car.
But then this lovely Chris Hyatt Baker, bless him forever, he'd raced in Formula 4. He was a young lad. He raced in Formula 4 the year before. And he used to crash a lot.
Yeah.
He used to smoke some funny smelling cigarettes after the race, like far out man. We were worried he'd smoking those before the race, but I don't think he was. But anyway, we heard over the winter he'd bought the Crosley 25F, which was a car that had transformed Formula Ford when Richard Morgan was loaned one, and it was just a chassis that just worked, had torsional rigidity, and just won so many races for Richard Morgan. So he'd bought one, but then he didn't turn up this next year, 1975, wasn't racing at all, so we thought he hadn't bothered. And suddenly, in the middle of the year, as I was at my lowest ebb, thinking civil engineering was a great job to go back to.
Yeah.
It appeared in Autosport magazine, and Chris Hyatt Baker has for sale his Crosley 25F.
Really?
So I just phoned him up and said, Chris, I have to buy your car, but I can't pay you for it until I sell it. And he just went, yeah, far out, man. Yeah, come and pick it up.
Amazing.
So I by now I had a borrowed van from George Wimpy Co Limited, bless you, George Wimpy, and I had a borrowed engine from Scholar Engines, thank you, Scholar, and I had, all I owned was a very battered trailer that I'd won in the competition, and the gearbox. Those are the only two things I owned in life. I owned nothing else apart from an overdraft, so I put my rusty trailer on the back of my Wimpy van and went rushing down to Bristol and found this wonderful Crosley in the corner of this workshop. And Chris had done, he'd discovered hang gliding. And he was one of that dangerous sports club that did some silly things, including bungee jumping off the Clifton suspension bridge. So I think he discovered hang gliding. He found he could fly around his hang glider,
smoke away,
and wow, man. So as I was busy, loading it on, before he changed his mind onto my rusty trailer, he said, "Yeah, there's only one stipulation, Tiff." I thought, "Oh God, what's this now?" You've got to put the name of my school of hang gliding on the car.
Right.
Fine, Chris, I'll do anything. Bizarrely, the name of the school was the High School of Hang Gliding.
Oh my goodness.
So and this was just amazing, because I'd raced. It was a funny statistic, because Brands Hatch was my local circuit, my first track, in the racing school. But I'd done 41 races there in heats and finals, and never won a bloody race.
Really?
I'd won everywhere else except Brands Hatch. And I won the next 13 out of 14 races at Brands Hatch.
But that Brands race that year, wasn't Frank Williams watching? Or
that was in Formula 4 2000. That was a story a bit later, but when he watched me the race of champs in the wet.
That's it. Yeah. So what was the story there?
So after the Crosley then got me winning Formula Ford races, and then that got me the free Formula 4 2000 driver.
Right.
Hawk,
Yes. That's
dear old Matt McKinstry.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first race of 76, which was my first season, I did 4 races in 75 in Formula 4 2000, won a couple of those, so it was all kicking off. I was winning in 1600s. And then Chris Whitty, a journalist friend of mine, he was a great help in those days. And journalists are very valuable for young racing drivers, because they've got the ear of, In the old days, the journalists and magazines used to do sort of all formulas, so they'd mix with the drivers, whereas now I think journalists sort of get one formula.
Yeah, there's a very much kind of focus on F1, isn't there?
So Chris knew all the F1 and the Formula 4 drivers, and he'd helped a few others. And so he said to Frank Williams, watch the Formula 4 2000 race, because this Tiff Needell was a good lad. Anyway, it was a damp track on slicks, which has always been one of my favourites. I always seem to excel there with my sideways style.
If it was snow.
Yeah. And anyway, Ian Taylor was my big enemy that year. But I was just in my element. The car was right, the track was greasy. And I remember bottom straight, it's always called a straight, which is actually a gentle curve.
Yeah.
I was doing these power slides all the way along bottom straight, in the lead, pulling away at about 2 seconds a lap. Thinking Frank's sitting out, looking at the back. He's looking at the back of the paddock, watching me every time. I'll look at this, Frank. And when Chris said, "Did you watch the Formula Ford 2000 race to Frank. He said, yeah, some bloke just came on and walked away with it. It got a bit boring. So he gave up watching. Oh. And every lap of the whole race, I was thinking, Frank Williams is watching me, Frank Williams is watching me.
Oh, no. But that set you up for your... things got a little more difficult after that, but you did get an F3 drive.
That was the only time I bought a ride, in a way. It was, because now I had this free Formula Ford 2000 drive.
Yeah.
And I was doing European Championship races in Formula Ford 1600 for the Hawk.
Yeah.
Helping Derek Warwick win his European Championship.
Has he ever thanked you for that?
He's hugged me a few times, I remember. That was another story where I should have let him win the Danish Grand Prix and I won it and he didn't. That's another. But, so I was doing all this Formula Ford and Formula Ford 2000 for Hawk and had to progress, but, getting a drive. But Sapphire were in Bolton-on-Thames, Byfleet, near to where I lived, So I went round to see them because I knew they had a Formula 3 car and chatted to them and Peter Thorpe that ran the company. They had no money themselves. It was this one-off little Sapphire. So they offered me a deal that, if I could find a few £1,000s, they'd run me in the last 6 races of 1976. And so I started Formula 3 with Sapphire and got a second place at the last round of the championship. And with all that, in that year, I did Formula Ford 1600, 2000 and F3.
Blimey.
And then got offered the Goodwood Award, the Modern Day Autosport Award. Came my way, 76, so I was voted the most promising young driver. James Hunt presented me with the trophy, just after he'd come back from Japan. So I thought, this is brilliant, because all my publicity then was, I was the next James Hunt. Tiff Needell, the next, I had these brochures made and went sponsor hunting. I never found any sponsors. I was useless at finding sponsors.
Sorry, nearly missed that turning there.
Come back to Harting, where I lived.
Yeah,
big tractor.
That is an absolutely enormous tractor. It's...
You found reverse quite quickly.
Well,
your knowledge of
it's
this
at
car.
least the sort of...
It's got a round steering wheel, which is nice, and all these stupid steering wheels with bottoms chopped off them nowadays I can't stand.
The visibility is actually not too bad out the back, I must say. There we go.
So 76 was the big turning point when, although I didn't find any sponsorship, I did get offered the drive from Unipart. So I became a professional Formula 3 driver.
Yeah, but was that your first professional? Would you class yourself as a professional before you got to F3?
Well, no, I was a civil engineer. I was still working. I was still working 5 days a week. All this Formula 4, going around Europe and doing Formula. I was working, 5 days a week as a civil engineer. Still, so in fact by then it was full time because the university had ended. I'd graduated from university in 74. So I've been full-time civil engineer for 2 years, working at Hammersmith in the design office.
Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, it was a really good job actually. It was a nice career. As a career, it gets you out of the house. You're going out of the office. I mean, you go and visit site visits. I really enjoyed my time there.
Yeah.
There are still many buildings standing thanks to my brilliant civil
Well, there we go. Are there any that aren't still standing thanks to your brilliant?
Pulled down.
So, but from F3, you got your big Formula 1 break.
Yeah, well, so Formula 3 was 2 years with Unipart, that was the big thing.
But it wasn't all easy, was it?
No, that was the Dolomite Sprint saga because, that was the great shame of it. We had to use this British Leyland Unipart, so we had to have a British Leyland engine, the Dolomite Sprint, which, when normally aspirated, the Dolomite Sprint was an amazing engine, very powerful and worked in touring cars and others. But it just didn't seem to work with the restrictor on it, and I don't know why, but nobody ever found. We had so many engine builders and new designs and things were going to work, and after 2 years of racing for Unipart, we hadn't won a race, and it was a frustrating struggle. There were many moments, second places again. But I had to move on. That's why I was looking for sponsorship and using that momentum with the next James Hunt and trying to find money for Formula 2. But it wasn't coming. I had one Formula 2 race in 1977 thanks to Tolman Group, Alex Hawkridge.
But that went very well, didn't it?
Yeah, it was all right. It was the Chevron where the engine broke. And again, I thought this was my life. I think I did a practice start. I might have over-revved it slightly coming up the pit. No rev limiters in those engines. That was the terror, So you over-revved an engine, by just missing a gear or a wheel spin, and you could damage the engines. But it was funny, actually. I've never been superstitious, but that was the 1977 race at Donington. It was the 13th round of the Formula 2. And I was in garage 13. And on the 13th lap, my engine blew. It was a lot of 13s. I was racing with Elio De Angelis. I was having a fantastic battle. Elio was in the Chevron with a Ferrari engine in.
Yeah.
And I was really loving it. I'm having power. As soon as you get more power, you just love it more, you know.
And but then the F1 drive didn't. I mean, because did that not come off the back of Regazzoni's accident?
Yeah, we're way forward now in 1990 because I did the.
That was in 1980, yeah.
Yeah, because 77 Formula 2, I did one Formula 3 race, Formula 2 race in 78 as well in a March 782 at Hockenheim.
Right.
That was my biggest, because then I got up to third place. I was going to march, ended up having a factory 1, 2, 3, but I was going to stop them. I was lying in second place overall when the engine broke again.
What was it like driving Hockenheim?
Wonderful, because it had the old Os curve, the big fast curve out the back, and massive slipstream. It was Eddie Cheevers and Warwick and Stephen South, and it was a fantastic grid. And Brian Hinton was in there, and because that was the last year before Ground Effect.
Right.
So 1978 was just the most amazing Formula 2 season. Again, they had qualifying. I think at Hockenheim there were like 43 cars turning up for 36 places, and I qualified 7th. You know. Tom Walkinshaw was the team manager. So, Tiff, keep a low profile. I really thought that was it. That was the making. But I then hung on over the winter of 78, 79 to get the Tolman drive.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen because Henton ended up through Pirelli and other things, and it didn't come my way. And Robin Herd said, if only you'd knocked on my door, Tiff, I would have got you a drive.
Really?
In the Works March Formula 2 team. But he thought I got the Tolman drive. Oh, so many close shaves. In fact, I nearly wrote my book. It's something called Tiff Gear, the autobiography. I was just put so nearly.
So nearly. What if?
Yeah, I was so nearly. What if, Tiff? You know, if Brian Henton hadn't been alive, I would have got a Tolman drive. And Jeff Lees won a lot of races in Formula 4. And Jeff Lees was in my way a lot in my career. And there's always been like one driver in my way. And in television, you know, Clarkson was in my way of being the most famous man on cars on television. But yeah, then 79, I got that Chevron drive in the British Formula 1, the Durex scholarship.
Yes, of course, yeah.
So that enabled me to leave Unipart. So that was my Unipart out clause.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would have done third year with Unipart in Formula 3. In fact, me getting the Durex scholarship helped some little brummie called Nigel Mansell. Because it was only because I left the Unipart drive that he got that seat, because he was out of luck and out on his knees. He had no money and no drive left.
I think he'd mortgaged his house by that time.
Yeah, he'd spent all that money, and then he spent it on the Works March. It's Toyota, but didn't do very well in it. So he'd blown it. So
it's funny, isn't it? Because you look at racing drivers today, and they. Where's he going?
Stop it,
and it kind of looks, especially if you look at someone like Lewis Hamilton's career, who will, go into a championship, stay for the second year and win it. I think people seem to think that that's just how it always happened.
We were all ducking and diving.
It never did,
driving
didn't it?
this. Well, no, different chassis.
And
so the Durex Formula 1 car was amazing, and it was an old car, but then it was a 76 design, and I was up against 79 cars. But I finished second in my first Formula 1 race.
Yeah. What was the jump like from F2 to F1?
It wasn't. It was a funny day. I was at Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, and so it's a nice big fast circuit, so at least I got a bed in. And it was just once you first left the pit and the DFV engine chimed in behind you.
Right. Magic. Magic.
And again, as I said when I moved up to Formula 2, whenever you got more power, you just thought, well, this is it. Yeah, more power. I want more.
Yeah.
But going down to Club Corner, my very first lap. You remember the famous when they all went to the catch fencing? This was a torrential rain at Club Corner. You remember the Formula 1 Grand Prix? Because there's actually a river diagonally across.
Yes, yeah.
But when it's virtually dry, there still remained a little damp patch diagonally across.
Yeah.
And I went down to Club. I was just braking, and I hit this dampness, but of course it's diagonal, so I hit the front first, then the rear. And I spun through 360 degrees. And kept going into Club Corner.
Yeah.
On my outlap, but I could have so easily.
Outlap?
I could have on my outlap. I could have so easily.
Oh my goodness.
So I just kept going. I thought, God, I wonder if everyone noticed, But soon I was just loving the car. And I remember Aya Elch, my biggest friend in Formula 3 and Formula 2. Oh, Tiff, you were good in that. The boys were all watching over the pit wall as Tiff was out of a Formula 1 car.
Did it feel that? Was there a sense of relief when you finally got to drive an F1 car? Because it'd been such a struggle to get there. Surely you must have...
Yeah, but it was only 4 races,
Yeah.
And I knew it wasn't a winning car, it was old-fashioned design. So it was only yet more to put on my CV.
Yeah.
But of course, it then helped me get the Grand Prix drive with Team Ensign in '79, which I couldn't take up because of the super licence.
Oh, yes, of course, yeah, and you would...
Life's been fraught. Talk about Lewis, these modern kids that just go from Formula to Formula, and boy, I was going everywhere, this way and that, with no money. And then I got offered the Ensign drive when Derek Daly gave it up because he was hoping to jump into the Williams. And it was right in the middle of that, Balestra versus Bernie and Max, and Fokker Formula One, who was running the rules, and they just introduced the super license for the first time to make sure people couldn't buy into Formula One without talent.
Right.
So I applied for my super license, and it was a big no from Paris because you had to get 10 top sixes in F2 or 5 top sixes in Formula 2. Sorry, 10 in Formula 3 or 5 in Formula 2, which I'd qualify for easily. Until Paris pointed out that the British Formula 3 Championship was run to a national permit. So none of my Formula 3 results counted. So.
Oh my goodness.
And of course, because they hadn't thought about that when they wrote the rule. Because the British Formula 3 Championship was the championship. I was racing against Piquet and Senna and came over, and everyone came to Britain to do the British Formula 3 Championship. It was the series. And so they made the foreigners get British licenses. Because if you run an international permit, even nowadays, you've got to pay the FIA £3,000 or £30,000 a race now.
Yeah.
Whereas a national permit is £3,000 a race. So obviously the clubs in Britain thought, well, if we run it for a national permit...
Right, okay.
So they made the foreign drivers have British licences.
Yeah.
So that saves it. Also, we're all running British licences. So it's a complete paperwork cock-up.
But you did get on the grid the following year.
Yes,
well
so I missed out 5 Grand Prix that should have been mine in '79, and then they got Regazzoni in, which would be so I would have still been kicked out for Regazzoni to move in. Then he broke his back in that awful accident, and then I was back in again. But by then an American half owned the team, and they'd seen Jan Lammers qualify 5th or 4th at Long Beach, where Regazzoni had his crash. So they wanted Jan. Jan was the kid. Yeah. And Jan was a fantastic driver. He looked so good in that horrible ATS. So I was really only on a temporary licence with Ensign anyway. Yeah. And then, I qualified in Belgium and was so proud to have done it, got there and been on a Formula 1 grid on merit alone. You know?
But I seem to remember you telling me that when you're mechanic, you had sort of Andretti, Fittipaldi, Prost kind of on the grid, and as the mechanics walked away from your car and you were left alone, you started humming the Formula 1 theme tune in your helmet.
Well, again, it was the dream, you see. I mean, I'd managed to get half a day's testing at Donington in a car. Right. Before I went to Zolder to try and qualify for this one Grand Prix. And you look nowadays, I've only had 3,000 miles testing, they say, and they get a Formula 1. I've only had 5 days off, for goodness sake, kids just getting to drive the flipping things. So it happened so quickly. And I was at Donington on the Wednesday, and I was at Zolder on the Friday. Yeah. And then there I was on the back row of the grid with Emerson Fittipaldi alongside me. My schoolboy hero. I used to watch Emerson at Crystal Palace in Formula 2 and Formula 3. Emerson, Lotus, my hero. Yeah. And I don't know, the mechanics left me, and I don't know. So I just started humming the theme tune for. I thought I was still watching on telly. So I sat there going dum da da dum, Emerson Fittipaldi, me dum da da dum, Emerson me, Emerson dum da da dum da da dum.
But I think that's what is so great about your career, because obviously you wanted to get to the top, but actually you're a die-hard motorsport fan.
Yeah, I just wanted to race. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's, and it's. I mean, you haven't got too long left, but there's so many things that you raced in, and 1980 was your first taste of Le Mans. Yeah. But obviously, you then 10 years later, you got your podium there, kind of not necessarily against all odds, but you were a private team against.
Yeah, it was against the top six were all works cars at the end, so that was amazing.
But was that not down to the wing that you had?
Yeah, we made our own wing. That was the year when they changed the first year of the chicanes. Yeah. So Porsche said it's still a low downforce track. So everyone used to, all the Porsches, there must be about 20 of them, used to have to buy the, £50,000 front nose and low tail just for the one race. So we looked at I was racing this private entered car in Japan, Japanese championship with an American crew chief that had worked with Yost and other people, so he knew Porsches and stuff.
Yeah.
So we looked at the map and thought, well, each of the 3 straights at Le Mans is the same length as the Fuji Speedway straight we used to race.
Right.
So we bought the low downforce, then went to Fuji and tried the low downforce, and then we tried the normal high wing, and we started thinking, well, hold on a minute, this it's pretty 50-50 as well. What you're losing on the corners now, you're gaining enough of the straights. But it was still a bit draggy, the high downforce.
Yeah.
So I had a friend, Gordon Horn, who used to make carbon fibre wings, and he made us a special narrower main plane for the Porsche high downforce tail.
Yeah.
So we put our own main plane on, went back to Fuji, and now we've got more speed in the straight line and still enough downforce. So we turned up with our homemade rear wing, and it seemed to be the answer. We weren't that quick at the straights, but we made up around the corners. So we were reasonably competitive. And Brun, of course, the other team that did the same, and should have come third, to be fair to them. But thankfully they blew their engine with 2 laps to go. It's tough motor racing. I always hate it when Lewis Hamilton has to say, oh, it's a shame Nico didn't finish second.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. He's delighted his engine's blown up and the manufacturers haven't got a first and second. So we did luck into the 3rd place. But, and the thing is, Gary had rebuilt the car himself in Japan.
Amazing. It must have taken him months.
He changed a few things. A few of the things that broke on the factory car and the other customer cars didn't and ask, because he'd changed something that he saw was a weak link.
Right.
And so we ran, I got David Sears in and Anthony Reid, a couple of Brits, that were a bit like me, hadn't had the big brakes. And we thought we'd double stint in the night, because in those days, we only used to double stint in the night, because no power steering, the gear change was heavy. They were heavy cars physically. But we ended up single stinting the whole race.
Really?
So we just used to drive for 50 minutes and then stop for an hour and a half and then get back in again. So,
Blimey.
I look at the boys now doing these triple stints with their food. We had no fitness guru or dietitian.
No. But in '84, I think at Kramer, you didn't even have catering, so you lived off croque monsieurs, didn't you?
Well, Kramer's, I was racing in Japan then I already started, because that's what, my Group C career really, sports cars. I got the drives in Japan, because there weren't that many free drives or paid drives in Europe. And because it was really humid hot, Suzuka and stuff in August. So we had drink bottles for the first time in a car.
Yeah.
So I arrived at Le Mans it was 84, wasn't it? And I said to Kramer, do you think we could put a drink bottle in the car somewhere? Because it's quite nice to, And he just turned to me and said, Tiff, you're a racing driver, you will drive, not drink. And just threw the whole concept of the drinks bottle in the car. And you look at the boys now when they have their sweat weighed, don't they? And they've got a nutritionist and a masseur
and it's the only thing in the news if a driver's drink bottle stops working.
No.
It's
I guess it's a bit of a shame, because they do these, triple stints now, which they seem to have to do.
Or quadruple even.
I know, and I'm not sure it's quick, but they only get in the car like 3 times.
Yeah.
Then they get 3 stints, that's their Le Mans sort of thing.
Then you're done.
And I'm not convinced it's quick. It seems to be tactically the way to go.
Yeah. But so obviously you got the podium at Le Mans, but I seem to remember reading somewhere that you regard your greatest triumph in motorsport being pre-qualifying at Monaco. Is that right?
It was, because that was, I mean, I know sometimes a bad car works better than wet, so you can't really say that it was all my own talent. But the first, because Monaco is still the Thursday and the Saturday.
Yeah.
But we always should have an hour's untimed practice and then an hour's practice with time for qualifying. So it was the same. So it was the same as now, 2 sessions a day. But always the second hour was for the grid. And so on the Thursday it was pouring with rain. Well, it wasn't raining that much, it was sort of half wet, half dry. And so that was the first qualifying session. And I was out in the Ensign, floundering around in the rain, and qualified 19th. Because there at Monaco, whereas before, because 30 cars used to run every race.
Yeah.
So in Belgium, I was 23rd out of about 28 or 29, so I was on the back row.
Yeah.
But for the Monaco, it's only the fastest 20 get a race. And there were 30 cars on the track all at the same time. Anyway, I came out of this session 19th out of the 30, right behind Prost, I think, and close to Rosberg and other people in the sort of Fittipaldis and things. So so I'd qualified for the Monaco Grand Prix in the rain amongst 30 cars in an unpopular car. And of course, the Ensign was a single car entry, which didn't help. Nobody knows, no marker to put my time up against.
Yeah.
So that drive to be on the grid, and I sort of, and Friday was the day off, and I kept on hoping to be a thunderstorm or the whole place to get wiped out. But yeah, I think my greatest drive was to get on the grid on the first qualifying session.
Yeah, and then you probably started your rain dancing immediately after getting out of the car.
But it's to drive around Monaco in the wet in a Formula 1 car. That I mean, one awful moment when I was coming down to what's the left-hander after chicane? Is that Rascasse? Isn't it? The famous left-hander. Still the same
you're testing
corner.
my corner names now, Tiff.
Oh, come on, Tiff. Anyway, me too.
My excuse is I've never been round. Out of the two of us, I'm the one who hasn't been round Monaco.
The fast left after the chicane as you come up to the seafront.
Yeah.
I know it was quite a cambered road. I think nowadays it's flatter. We had a very cambered road with big curbs and things.
Yeah.
And when I braked, it just moved to the right down the camber, and the front and rear wheel clanged the barrier.
Oh.
But I couldn't get it off the barrier because the front wheel, of course, was running with the barrier.
Oh,
I remember I was going to be planted, but luckily the barrier turned in and it helped turn me in. It was my biggest moments.
Yeah. But there's obviously we're sort of slowly. I hope this hasn't been too long for you.
No, I'm enjoying it. I can tell more. You're
to
bringing
get to
back
the
all those
motorcycle.
memories. You're making me so excited about what I did. I forget. I actually go now to Le Mans and I go to racetracks, and I can't actually think that I actually did what I did.
Really?
I see a photo and I can't remember being in that car.
Yeah.
And it's lovely when fans send me photos to sign from around the world, you know. And actually, they send me a collection of 6 or 7 photos, and oh God, I forgot. Yeah, I did that as well.
Yeah.
But yes, reminding me of Monaco is wonderful times.
And the super touring era, it's sort of you're
wrong
touring.
Wrong car.
Well, you're touring.
Wrong car,
you want
right
a race.
time.
You want a race, but I think you're sort of best known for having perhaps too small coming together with a man called Nigel Mansell. Yeah.
Well, that was the most annoying thing, because my super touring ace was unfortunately with Nissans when they were a back of the grid car, so yet again the story of my life. I finally get the drive, but in the wrong team. So it's been a very frustrating super touring, to be honest. And then we came to this Toka Shootout where Nigel turned up with Ford with his Mondeo, thanks to winning the IndyCar Championship. But I was in a Vauxhall Cavalier for the first time, sponsored by Top Gear magazine, a Ray Malek car teammate to Leslie.
Yeah.
So for me, it was a moment to finally show my talent in a super tourer, because I was at the back of the grid with a Nissan. So yeah, I was running third behind. I had Soper up my bum, and I had Leslie was one in front of me, and Paul Radisich was leading the other 4 because he was the world champion at the time.
Yeah.
And Nigel was tracking us down. But finally, had a car to go onto straights, and I had the same engine power. And I was, instead of defending all my life like the Formula 3 Dolomite Sprint or a Nissan with its engine, I was actually going down straights conference. I'd leave the corner, not going to get me. No, I was really enjoying it. I could win this, Tiff. And all of a sudden, Nigel arrives in the mirrors, and I don't know where he got past Soper. The next, he dives on me going into Redgate, clatters me off the road on the way out, left me no room at all, smacked me off the road. So then I've lost 3rd place now to him, and then Soper got by when I was on the grass and back to 5th place. Then we're heading down Crater Curves. You could hear the crowd roaring because Nigel was going to win.
It was a huge crowd. What was it, 100,000?
Biggest crowd Donny's ever had. They all had their Union Jack shorts on and their red 5 banners. And Nigel was, he was slow initially to get used to a front-wheel drive car, but he drove like Nigel does, just on it. He was on top of it. He never said he'd be ahead of his car, but Nigel just reacted to it. He was amazing brute force and talent. So when he went down to Crater Curves, you could hear the roar of the crowd, and then he turned into old hairpin. We all saw him getting sideways. Oh no, this is his broadside, heading for the infield. So Soper went by on his left, as the obvious thing to do, because Nigel was obviously heading right. Then just as I was following Soper, he put so much opposite lock on it, spat back my way, came straight across the road in front of me. And I did brake to try and avoid him, but I did clatter him in an unfortunate angle that did happen to send him straight
into a bridge.
He still reckons he would have corrected it and spun it back the other way. So he said he reckoned he was just about getting it all back under control. But anyone seen the on-board where it's I don't think he was ever going to get that one back. So yeah, I was probably more famous for being the man that nearly killed Nigel Mansell. But he never apologised for ruining my race.
Did you not?
It was a £12,000 first prize.
He then ruins your race.
The tunnel. We're into the track.
Yeah, here we are.
It's been a long time. I'd said a quick lift. That's what you said.
I know.
This is Carpool idea.
There have been some road closures, if I'm honest. So
I'm looking at my watch, my proudest watch, because it's the Formula 1 Drivers Club. I'm very got a little name on it, and
that is very smart.
Very nice.
So just quickly before you jump out, I mean, you've had some great races here at the Revival, haven't you?
Wonderful.
And you've, I think one of your sort of most sort of proud moments, is that not overtaking Christensen? Was it in a Rover?
That was members' meeting. Yeah,
was that the members' meeting? Yeah.
I had the right car finally, a Rover.
There we go. It's all about the right car, isn't it?
Yeah, I had the right car. Yeah, I'd caught up to him, and it was last lap. We had slow co-drivers. So I was at the back of the pack, and we were in a pace car, so it made me overtake people. And I got from 15th to 10th. But last lap in the book, there was Christensen, the same car as me. Who's won so many races. I've never won at Goodwood. I've got lots of second place. I was second place, always second place. I'm going to do him, so I did, Tom. Into
Won the race.
Got one. I finished 9th. It wasn't for a win.
Oh,
it felt like a win to me.
I thought it was for a win.
The Lister Jaguar, I'd cut a couple of second places and podiums I've had in E-types and Lotus 30s.
Well, we've got the members' meeting coming up. There's still time. Yeah. But Tiff, it's so great that you're...
There's all these youngsters. Just last word is I think Goodwood should be for people born before 66 as well.
Really?
Yeah, because then I get better drives. All these kids are coming in with the fun, and the entrance
I'll tell you what,
these young kids.
I will put that to the team.
Okay.
Yeah. Tiff, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for the lift.
Not at all. Here's a
long
second.
flipping time.
Enjoy your day.
Cheers, Ed.
Yeah, cheers, Tiff. Bye-bye.